Hello! So this is my first review. I'm doing a review of Partials by Dan Wells, which was not on that list that I posted. I'm already lying to you. Also, I'm filming this, totally not filming this the same day as I filmed the first video. What? I just wear the same clothes all the time. Anyway, thoughts on Partials by Dan Wells. Previously, before reading this, I had read Dan Wells' I Am Not a Serial Killer and the subsequent books. And I did really like them. My issue with those books was, like, I really loved the character. I really loved kind of his struggle and his relationships and that whole thing. What I really didn't like was how the answer to every single mystery was... Okay, spoilers here. The answer to every single mystery is, it's a demon! It's a demon from the supernatural! And I just didn't like that. I just thought it was so much more compelling when he was trying to, like, figure out the human mind and, like, figure out his own mind at the same time, and it just was much less interesting when suddenly there was a demon, and it was the demon that did it every time. But, you know, by and large, like that book, he's a decent writer. This book was not as good. It wasn't as good, and I was disappointed. I was disappointed by that. Like, it wasn't bad, it was okay. It was just, like, kind of weak, I thought. Like, I noticed this in his I Am Not a Serial Killer books, just that he really doesn't do humor very well. Like, it's really forced, most of the time. And it's just, like, he also doesn't do the how teenagers talk thing very well. And it worked okay with I'm Not a Serial Killer because that, like, John Wayne Gacy does not speak like a normal teenager does, and that was fine. This book, he is really trying to make them talk like regular teenagers do, and they just don't. It just sounds silly. I mean, it's the best, the book is the best when they're figuring out, like, sciencey stuff. And, you know, being sciencey. I don't know, I'm not a sciencey person, so that's literally the best description of that I can give. And also, you know, if I were a sciencey person, maybe I would read this book and go, all this science is bullshit. I'm just very impressed by any kind of science going on around me, ever, because I'm not a sciencey person. The plot of this book is, like, very, like, basic, very, you know, super predictable plot twists, like, to the point where you can, like, quote it almost. It's just, like, the characters are really meh, they're, like, okay, but they're not that great, and it's just, like, their relationships are really predictable, and it's just, yeah. As dystopian premises go, it's also, like, super cliche. Non-humans versus humans. Humans build, like, an isolated society from non-humans. A bunch of time goes by. Something happens that then, like, drives the species together. Conflict ensues. Secrets emerge. It's, like, exactly the same plot as Attack on Titan, but less good. Because Attack on Titan had titans, and they ate people. The one thing that I actually really grabbed me in this book was, like, the tone of the book. Because I've read books where, you know, the human race is at stake, and I've read books where the government is struggling to, like, maintain control kind of thing, and both of these things are happening in this book, but I've never really read one where there's quite this level of just, like, total abject hopelessness. And I had not realized how depressing it is to read about, like, two sets of species who are literally just, like, completely stripped of the ability to reproduce. Basically, the premise of this book is that, a long time ago, the Partials, which are, like, robots, kind of, They're part human robot things. They never really explain what they are, only that they're not human, and humans use them as machines. So kind of robots, like a la the androids in Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep kind of thing. And they released this disease into the air, and it killed 99.96, I think, percent of the population. 0.04 of them are still alive, and they're all kind of gathered in on Long Island, living there all together, and they're trying to have babies, but all of the babies, the instant they hit like 3 days old, die of this disease, which is called RM. And the main character is plucky and a doctor, and she's trying super hard to figure out how to fix this, and at the same time she's only like 16, because anyone older than that who is a woman is pregnant, because so many, they have like this law where everybody has to be pregnant constantly, even though all the babies are dying, because they're like, one of these babies is gonna turn out okay, goddammit, and they never do. And it's just like so depressing to read about like these reams and reams of pregnant women going in and having babies, and all these babies dying, and it's just like so frustrating, but like in a good way. And it's really fascinating because there's nothing that's really like, okay, this is gonna sound awful, but it's not like super like massive or life-threatening to the actual characters. Like, none of the characters are ever like permanently in danger. It's like it's not ever the present that's really, really threatened. Like, it is a little bit, but not really. It's like just the future. And it's fascinating just to like read this book and just feel like helpless and frustrated throughout the whole thing, because you're like, what do you do when there's literally no way for your race to ever continue? And that just was really interesting to me. And just like, well, and then the one thing I was constantly asking throughout this book was, because they have this law where like, once they pass the law, if you have 2 months to get pregnant, and then if you're not pregnant within 2 months, they put you in jail. But like, what about all the women who can't have babies? Like, what happens to them? Are they just like in jail? If so, that's really shitty. Because I mean, like, it's not, I feel like this book is making it sound like it's way more easy to get pregnant than it actually is. And I feel like there are far more women who find it difficult, especially if this disease came through and like ravaged the species. I feel like there's a lot of women who are going to jail because they can't have kids. And that seems really awful and unfair to me. But then they never address it. That's never addressed. So, I don't know. Maybe in the future, you know, that's like not, that doesn't happen. Everybody can have kids. Okay, the writing in this book is so melodramatic. Like, stunningly melodramatic. Okay, there's a point at the end where, spoilers, the main character's about to do the thing that's gonna save stuff and, you know, whatever, and she literally stops right before she's about to do it and thinks, look at this thing. It's so doomed. Look how doomed this thing is. I hold the answer to all of our problems in my hands. Watch me save humanity. And then she saves humanity. And spoilers. Basically, premise was okay. Tone was good. Everything else was, like, really weak. I have little to no desire to read the other books in this trilogy, which means that I won't. However, if you are a teenager who has never read a dystopian novel before, I say teenager, by the way, not to belittle teenagers, but because this book is clearly intended for teenagers. Anyway, if you're a teenager who has literally never read a dystopian novel before, meaning that you're somehow the only teenager on the planet who doesn't know what the Hunger Games is, and you have no way to access Hunger Games or The Long Walk or the Unwind series or The Giver or a bunch of other dystopian novels, then you could read this. You might like it. Okay. You could certainly start with worse dystopian novels, and that's what I'm going to talk about next week. Stay tuned for it and stuff.